And finally tonight, have you noticed the media has lost interest in Hurricane Ian, right? Oh, it was no holds barred. It was everybody down there. It was send everyone. And in the aftermath of the hurricane with the horrific images, remember, we had to focus on Governor DeSantis' response because he was going to mess things up and people died because of him. And he can't get anything. Oh, no, actually, that's not at all what ended up happening down there. In fact, bridges and causeways that were demolished by the storm have actually been rebuilt already under Governor DeSantis' leadership. It speaks not just to his ability as the chief executive of that state facing a crisis, being able to marshal the forces of the state to actually get something done, but it speaks to something larger. It speaks to competence in our government. It's almost like we Americans were yearning to see some basic competence, if it's at the state level, the local level, and certainly at the federal level. When something needs to get done, we want to know that our elected officials can get it done right the first time. Our friend and colleague Kurt Schlichter at Town Hall, he was filling in with our other friend and colleague Hugh Hewitt, the morning man here on Salem News Channel, just this morning, and he spoke with Governor DeSantis. Here, watch.
Well, Governor DeSantis, one of the things that people are yearning for is basic competence out of our government, the ability to actually perform, especially under pressure when it's an emergency. And I think the fact that the mainstream media is not talking about Hurricane Ian anymore demonstrates that you and your team, because this is a team effort, as you've recognized, have performed very, very well. One of the things a commander sometimes has to do is be unreasonable. That is to tell people, I need X done, even though maybe your people don't think it can be done. Is that kind of how you got these infrastructure repairs done? I want this island connected. I want you to get it fixed. Figure it out. I want it done. Get it done. Is that how you approached it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, we say that, red tape is just unacceptable in situations like this. And if you think about the bridges that we've done already, there's states in this country where they wouldn't have even had a plan to fix it for 6 months. I mean, that's just the reality. And so we were not going to do that. You know, we used to in this country be able to do big things very quickly. We've lost that in many respects. And so we just said, I don't want to hear any excuses. Don't worry about the bureaucracy. Don't worry about the red tape. We still, when you do these projects, I mean, they still did like an emergency bid so companies could bid their services, but they did it very quickly, and they said time is of the essence, and that was a very important component of this. So, yeah, you cannot be ground down in bureaucracy and red tape, but that's part of the reason why you have the streamlined chain of command where it's the governor, the emergency management director, and then every other state agency basically at the disposal of the emergency response.
Governor DeSantis, you mentioned the line of lineman trucks, and I remember that visual, and it struck me as very, very powerful. Again, Americans are yearning for competence, and seeing that line sent a message of competence. I watched what you did. You were out there at, like, the Waffle House cooking. Yep. You were doing press conferences. How important is it for a governor in a disaster to get out there and show people that normalcy is coming back, that things are under control, that things are getting done?
Well, I just think if you end up where the population just kind of gets mired in a sense of hopelessness, like has happened in other storms in our country, in my lifetime, that just makes everything so much more difficult. Now, the folks that got hit the worst in Southwest Florida, I mean, these are good, solid, very resilient people. So we were fortunate in the sense that these people bounced back by their nature. But to be down there and say, hey, things are going to come back. We want to have a rapid recovery. In fact, I was at the Waffle House, but I remember even the next day after the storm, you had things like Wawa open down there. Now, contrast that. They can be open in Florida less than 24 hours after almost a Category 5 storm hits, yet in Philadelphia, they can't open because of all the crime, in the streets and stuff. And so it's really a sharp contrast between more of a can-do spirit, not just on the part of the government, but on the part of folks in the private sector. And so that made a huge difference when you could go to the supermarket. Publix was open. It's our biggest supermarket chain. They were open Friday morning for a storm that left Wednesday evening in places like Cape Coral, which is pretty close to ground zero. So I think that made a big difference, and I think it's helped people be able to do what they need to do to get their own families back on their feet. I mean, you have people, maybe they had roof damage, maybe they had some flood damage, but they can save their home, but it's still an uncomfortable thing. And so having all those other services and everything kind of pop back quicker than I think anybody would have predicted, I think it just makes everything better in terms of the overall morale.